In this movie, we're going to imitate the Star Wars text scrolling effect. If you've seen any of the old Star Wars movies, you probably know what I'm talking about. If not, you're about to find out. If you want to follow along, you can open up alongtimeago.html in your working files folder. Now, first of all, we need to start off by making our body black. Now that looks like space, all right, but of course the problem is we can no longer see our text. So we can target this div with class of text by typing .text color yellow. Now that's getting there. Indeed, it is yellow text in the Star Wars movies, but there's something wrong. Several things, in fact. First of all, font family needs to be some sort of sans serif font. Now, if you happen to be a Star Wars fan, I'm sure you can figure out a better font for it than just sans serif. Personally, I'm more of a Star Trek fan, so I'm not really sure what the perfect font is. Moving on, we need to make this text a little bit bigger too. I'm going to choose 1.4M. Now we also need to take the text and justify it. That looks quite a bit better. Let's bring down the width to 75% and center it. So this is looking pretty good. Now, one other thing that we're missing is Episode 3 CSS Wars. Both of those headings need to be centered. So up here, I'm going to type .text .heading because both of those H1 and H3 tags have a class of heading. And I'm going to set their text align to be center. Now we're talking. Now it's time to do a little experimenting with our new CSS3 properties. Now you probably remember the transform property. You could do things like rotate, translate, and scale. You could also rotate in 3 dimensions, and that's exactly what we want to do. Because I'm using Google Chrome, I'm going to type WebKit transform, and I'll be using WebKit transform just for simplicity until the very end. Anytime you're building a proof of concept like this, it's okay to use specific browser prefixes that work for your current browser. After all, it's really annoying to change transform multiple times since you have all of your browser prefixes when you're just playing around. But if you ever build something like this and you want to push it to production, you want to make sure that your browser prefixes are all properly there. Because this is a proof of concept, I'm just going to work with WebKit. Now I'm going to rotate it in 3D. So which way do I want to rotate it? Well, rotate Z along the Z rotational axis would be like sticking a toothpick right into the text and then rotating it, a toothpick coming out of the screen. That's the axis you're rotating around. Rotate Y is like putting a toothpick right in the top and then twirling the toothpick. The text will rotate with the left going around to the back and the right going around to the front. That's the Y rotational axis. We want the X rotational axis. So I'm going to say rotate X, and I'll set it to 10 degrees. Now when I refreshed, you notice not much happened. If I change this to 30 degrees, or 50 degrees, or 80 degrees, you'll notice it just looks like it's squishing the text. Now that's because I haven't set up a perspective yet. Remember, perspective is the thing that tells the browser to render the things that are further away smaller, and the things that are closer to the camera larger. You can see this in all kinds of movies. 2 such films are Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo. Whenever the character looks down, you actually see the perspective of the camera change. They make that happen by moving toward the subject and zooming out, or doing the opposite movement. You also see it in the much less popular movie Angels in the Outfield, whenever Roger sees an angel. If you're curious, you can look it up on YouTube. It's a pretty cool effect. Now we can do the same thing with CSS by setting WebKit perspective. I'll set it to 1000 pixels. Now indeed, the areas that are further away are smaller, and the areas that are closer are larger. Another thing that's really fun is you can actually adjust the focal length, just like in those movies I was talking about, by animating WebKit perspective. If I hold the down key here, you can see the depth of field changing. In fact, I'll make it go much larger, and you can see everything go flat. So I refreshed the page to bring it back the way it was before, and now we have that rotation working. Now that I have a perspective, I can see that because of the perspective I chose, 80 degrees is a fairly large rotation. I'm going to change it back to 50. Now maybe 50 isn't enough. Let's try 60. A lot of this is guess and check, messing around with the perspective and the rotation to get it just right. This looks pretty good. I'm also going to increase the font size a teeny bit. This looks pretty good. Now the way we've set it up is a little bit tenuous. Because we're rotating in 3D around the center of this text here, if we change the size of the text, everything will change in interesting ways.